I have a PhD, but I got laid off at the end of last year, and I also lost my dad before the layoff. And many times I'm doubting myself and thinking, is this the best decision I have to make? This is not madness, but I've felt it to my core that the same things I've told people over the years are what God wants me to use to build a future for myself. Yeah. One thing I've learned in my life is that I do not ignore impulses. It's 1 o'clock, 1:37 to be exact. I've just come into my office. It's a Saturday. My kids are downstairs. They've given me a few minutes. They're playing. So as I came to sit on my table, I got this idea of filming me starting my business. I'm dedicating the last quarter of 2024 to build my business from ground up. I've been trying to do this for a couple of years, 2 years to be exact, but I had a full-time job, so I wasn't really dedicating a lot of time to work. I have a PhD, but I got laid off at the end of last year, and I also lost my dad before the layoff. I've done an episode on my career podcast. It's called The Frame Solutions. I'll leave it down below. But what I want to tell you is that I've learned not to ignore impulses. Many times God speaks to us through impulses, in the sense that you have a thought that will click in your mind, and if you ignore that thought and don't put it to use, many times you're going to miss the instructions or the progress you'd have made. I'll give another example. Sometimes you're there and someone's name crosses your mind, and if you don't attend to that, something might happen to that person. I've experienced that many times in my life. Earlier on, I never used to respond to these impulses. I would just think, that's a random thought that has crossed my mind. But ever since I learned to respond to these impulses, many things that I've done have been birthed through this. For instance, when I wanted to get a PhD scholarship to move to Australia, I didn't know much about Australia. But one day I was seated on my computer and the Spirit of God just told me, check PhD scholarships in Australia. And lo and behold, I came on this scholarship that I ended up applying for and getting and moving to Australia. Those are almost 10 years ago, and that impulse changed my life. So today, as I was downstairs trying to clean my kitchen, usually when God wants to speak to me, most times he speaks from my kitchen. So what happened, I was trying to clean, so I usually have time to think a lot and also quiet my mind and my spirit to listen to God while I am doing things, especially that equate to looking after my family. Most times it's when I'm cooking a meal, most times it's when I'm washing dishes or cleaning up the kitchen that I really get that time to have some God and me moments. So while I was there, I had a thought, why don't I document me building my multi-million, me building my multi-million entrepreneur business. I know this is not just a random thought. I know this thought is from God. I know this is what God wants me to do. I got laid off last year. I've applied for jobs a couple of times, but I haven't gotten any job. I had one interview and it wasn't the best. And also I've not felt God instructing me to move to another state. I live in Brisbane and many of the jobs in my specialty, which is biotechnology, are in Melbourne. I've been seeking God's face about moving to Melbourne, but I have not gotten an answer. But every time I go to seek God, he puts it on my mind that what I'm doing right now is what I should be doing. It might sound strange that it gets me to tears most of the times when I think about it, that I have a PhD, but I'm getting into entrepreneurship. That is totally different from what I studied. And many times I'm doubting myself and thinking, is this the best decision I have to make? But God at the back of my mind is always telling me, you're taking the right step. So today I came upstairs and I'm going to do my life audit. I've also designed a life audit workbook that I'm going to use for myself. And also, if you want to get it, I'll leave a link in the description of this video. Please get it and it will help you restart your life. It's never too late for you to start. In fact, this video, I've tried to film it a couple of times, but every time I want to film it, I just break down and cry. And I just have to stop filming it. But I believe it would be not an honest decision for me not to share my progress with my people in my YouTube circle. It is okay for you to start at any time. It is okay for you to start at any time. Startings are usually difficult. That many times you want to start something, you always have these fears at the back of your mind stopping you from doing what you want to do. But what I want to encourage anyone who gets to watch this video, if I get the audacity to put it out there, is that bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. Trust that instinct that you have at the back of your mind. Many of us think about God's voice as instincts. Many of us think about God's voice as the sixth sense. Others may think about it as random thoughts. Others may think about it as just the gut or the inkling in your mind. Many times when God speaks to us, He's just trying to train our hearts and our ears to listen to Him. And the best time you can listen to God is when you take whatever you feel and implement it and give it a try. I've shared that if I hadn't checked my computer that day and Googled PhD scholarships in Australia in 2014, I wouldn't have made it to Australia. It was just a random thought that came into my mind, and I followed it up by the action of Googling and finding the scholarship. Even before I could finish my master's, I write to the professor, I tell him, hey, I've seen the scholarship. I'm still doing my master's degree. I haven't finished it, but I would want to do a PhD in this kind of work that you do. And the professor was like, yeah, send in your application. And the rest has been history. The same applies to starting my business. At the back of my mind, I know from my gut, from my feelings, from the whole of my being, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel it. It keeps me awake at night. But the fear of doing it had stopped me from doing it. So today, I'm documenting my first day of building a multi-million business. I know this is what God wants me to do, because God does not give us desires for nothing. When He puts a desire in your heart and it doesn't go away, it's not out of lust. In the book of James, he says that we ask and do not receive because we ask with bad intentions. We ask a lust to feed the pride of the eye. My asking and my following up has been to help other people know the potential that is within them. Because it's when you realize that potential that God has put in you that you can tap into stepping into the person that you want to be. Many times we think we just have to keep acquiring from the outside. But everything that you need to live a life that God predestined for you is in digging in you. The education systems tell us that the best way we can make it is by piling knowledge on knowledge on knowledge on knowledge. I've studied to a PhD and I know what it means to study that hard. But sometimes what we need is to dig deep down us and develop those inherent talents that God has given us. From a young age, I've always mentored people. Even before I knew the word mentoring, I used to mentor people. I used to go to people and speak to them words of encouragement, and they would leave encouraged. I used to edit people's CVs even before I knew how to do a CV, and I would edit for my friends their CVs and they would go apply for jobs and get them. I would coach them in interviews and they would go apply for jobs and get them. They would go apply for scholarships and get them. They would go apply for grants and get them. But this time of my life, God has showed me that even if I apply for jobs using the same skills I've used all this time to get where I am, it's not working. And the reason why it's not working, it's because God does not see me in that line. He doesn't see me being employed. It might seem that someone thinks I'm running mad. This is not madness, but I've felt it to my core that the same things I've told people over the years are what God wants me to use to build a future for myself. Because if it's applying for a job, I know how to apply for jobs. I've applied for grants and gotten them. I've applied for scholarships and gotten them. I've helped countless of my clients to apply for jobs and get them. But at this point of my career, every job I've applied for, there's only been one interview, and all the rest have been regrets and not hearing back from the recruiters. What does that tell me? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is not going to work for me. And that tells me that the best way I can move forward is now to look deep inside me and ask myself the question, would I still want to be employed by someone when I can use what God has given me, the knowledge, the expertise, to build myself a life that I enjoy? I've spent time with my kids. I take my son for soccer. I have time with my daughter. I've had this time to concentrate on raising my family as a value I have so highly rated on my value system. So I'm sharing this to tell you that this is my first video in building myself a multi-millionaire business. I'll catch you in the next episode. If you've been blessed, let's get talking in the comments and subscribe, and I'll catch you in episode 2 of building myself a multi-millionaire business. Bye.